By the time Bob Filner won the San Diego mayor's race in 2012, he'd already served 2 decades in Congress and had a couple of stints on the school board and city council. That was the public story. But there was another story that remained private until one woman, a former political ally, spoke 7 months into Filner's mayoral tenure and accused him of sexually harassing women. She was soon followed by more than a dozen others, each with their own sordid tales of headlocks, inappropriate touching, and indecent proposals. The scandal revealed a mix of progress and status quo when it comes to sexual harassment. It showed power still spawns abuse. Women still choose silence, but when they do speak up, change can be speedy. Filner resigned. 3 months after the story broke, Filner was sentenced to 90 days home detention and 36 months probation for sexually harassing 3 women.
And they are not to blame. Bob Filner is to blame, and he needs to resign.
And angry Donna Fry repeating her calls for Mayor Bob Filner's resignation in a news conference packed with stunning accusations against him. The mayor still says he's not stepping down. I'm Dwayne Brown. The latest on the controversy tonight on KPBS Evening Edition.
Bob Filner is tragically unsafe for any woman to approach.
In the mayor's office, there are women who call him a dirty old man, who push him away.
More harsh words from Mayor Bob Filner's one-time supporters who say they're ready to file a sexual harassment claim. They held their news conference right outside his office. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Filner once again announced he has no plans to resign in the face of charges of sexual harassment. KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks is here to give us the latest. So what did they say, Sandia?
Well, just like last week, Donna Fry, Marco Gonzalez, and Corey Briggs, 3 former supporters of Bob Filner, gathered before a throng of cameras to ask for the mayor's resignation. And just like last week, they did not say how many women had come to them with claims they were sexually harassed, nor did any of the women themselves come forward to accuse the mayor.
And what new information do we actually have today?
Well, they did offer specific details, accusing the mayor of a long-running pattern of sexual harassment and even assault. They say that the mayor has a modus operandi, a way of getting women alone and forcibly kissing and touching them. They volunteered the anonymous stories of 3 women, a constituent, a woman who campaigned for Filner, and finally an employee who worked in the mayor's office. Donna Fry told the story of one woman. She accused Filner of grabbing the woman's breast, putting his hand beneath her bra, and forcing his tongue down her throat. Pretty nasty stuff. I mean, they aren't just talking harassment here. They're talking abuse. And Donna Fry called Filner tragically unsafe.
What's been the reaction to these latest revelations?
Well, more people have called for his resignation. Congresswoman Susan Davis joined the list of prominent Democrats who are calling on the mayor to step down. But there were those at the press conference who came in support of Filner, like Christine Mann. She says it feels like Filner is being railroaded in a push for political power.
I feel like we're being bullied by a handful of people in our government who want us to basically just do what they tell us to do, to just trust them, that there are these women who the acts have been so horrific and egregious that they cannot go on record and they cannot go through due process.
Mann says right now it's all hearsay, and she believes Filner should have his day in court. And that may well be coming. Marco Gonzalez, the lawyer for some of the women, says they will go forward with reporting the mayor to the city, and there may be lawsuits coming. The mayor is defending his actions, saying he is a hugger, but not an abuser, and he says resignation is not in his future. So this may have to go to the courts to decide. But the court of public opinion already seems to be turning on Bob Filner.
KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks.
I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, they are 4 women in positions of power, and all of them say they were targets of inappropriate behavior by San Diego Mayor Bob Filner. And they're talking exclusively to us. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off tonight. The leaders of San Diego's Democratic Party are beginning a meeting right now to talk about the sexual harassment scandal surrounding Mayor Bob Filner. Sources tell KPBS the committee will call on him to resign. They say the vote is, quote, a done deal. Now, if a vote does come during this newscast, we'll bring you the information as quickly as possible. Just last week, the committee split evenly on that same question. Since then, however, 7 women have come forward to say that Filner made unwanted sexual advances toward them, either during his time as mayor or when he was in Congress. 4 of them talked exclusively today with KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma.
They represent a cross-section of San Diego women who hold powerful positions. One is a retired rear admiral in the Navy. Another is a successful entrepreneur. One is responsible for overseeing the interests of San Diego's port tenants. And another is a leader in local academia. But these 4 diverse career women are bound by a common thread. They all say they've been on the receiving end of unwanted advances and inappropriate comments from Mayor Bob Filner. Former San Diego Navy Mayor Ronnie Froman, businesswoman Patty Roscoe, San Diego Port Tenants Association President Sharon Burney Cloward, and San Diego State University Dean Joyce Gaddis are here to talk about the harassment allegations swirling around the mayor. Welcome to all of you. I want to start with each of you describing very briefly your alleged encounters with Bob Filner. Sharon, let's start with you.
Well, in 2005, Bob Filner asked me to meet him for lunch, and I didn't understand it was just a lunch at that time, and I did not accept his offer at that time. In 2010, I attended an event down in National City, and where he pulled me away from some people that I was talking to, and addressed me and asked me why did I not accept his invitation to lunch back in 2005. At that time, as I said, I didn't know it was a lunch event, a lunch gathering with Bob Filner. At that time, he said I was beautiful and that he wanted to date me. At this time, Bob Filner was going through his re-election process, so he made it clear that he would like to date me as soon as the re-election process was over. In 2012, I attended another event. At this time, Bob Filner was running for mayor, and this event was at the convention center, the Town and Country Convention Center. And he came up to me after the event was over. I was talking with friends, and he came up and gave me a hug, and then he touched me, actually groped me on my backside inappropriately. As soon as he came in, he left, and I was left there startled and fearful. In fact, I actually had someone walk me to my car that night. Just recently, I attended the Mexican trade. There was a chamber had a, I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. In 2013, just a couple months ago, Mayor Filner attended a trade mission in Mexico City, of which I was there too, along with the chamber members. He actually, several women told me, and others, that he had touched them inappropriately or he had talked to them inappropriately. And so it seems to me that there's a theme here, and you'll hear from the rest of the women here, that he seems to go beyond what you should be going beyond as far as standards today.
Ronnie?
Well, a couple of years ago, I was at Bob Filner's office, congressional office, and I was there for a meeting to talk about a veterans program. I was the only woman in the room. We had our meeting. I was there with 2 gentlemen, and Bob had a staffer in the office. As we were leaving the office, all the guys left, and I was the last one in the room. And Bob stepped between me and the doorway, and he stopped me, and he got very close to me. And he ran his finger up my cheek like this, and he whispered to me, "Do you have a man in your life?" And I jumped back. I was very, very startled. And I said, "Yes, I have a man in my life." And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Lyndon Blue." He says, "Oh, you mean of the Blues Brothers?" He says, "Maybe we can all get together sometime and have lunch, and he can support me for mayor." I was really rattled. I went out in the car, got in with the 2 guys I was working with, and I told them never to leave me in a room alone with Bob Filner again.
Patty?
I've known Bob Filner for a long time, since he was in the city council, and on numerous occasions he's put me in what I guess now is the famous headlock, and I felt fearful, even as well as I knew him, because it was an invasion into my space, and he would come in and try and kiss me on the lips, and I'd have to squirm to get away. And just as recently as a few months ago, this happened, and I turned, and he just slobbered down my chin, and I was so violated, and I was so offended. And on other occasions, he's gotten close to me and put his hands in inappropriate places on my body. And it's just such a terrible invasion.
Joyce, what about you?
My experiences are somewhat like Patty's. It's a series of interactions with Bob where he's held me and held me too tight, a kiss on the cheek, which is inappropriate, hand on the knee that lasted too long. Moreover, I've been in the environments where he has made those sexual comments to others, and I've seen the interaction from others when they cringe when he's had those interactions as he's had with Patty. I've experienced his sexual innuendos with me at various events that, again, have left me in that strange feeling of this is inappropriate, this is unwanted, and this shouldn't be happening.
Sharon, when these alleged incidents occurred with you, did you report them to anyone? Did anyone see them?
There were witnesses at the 2012 event, the people that I was talking to. I did report it to my board members, looking for support from them at that time, but did I report it to anything beyond that? No, I did not.
Joyce, you helped develop sexual harassment policies at San Diego State University. Stories of sexual harassment have swirled around Bob Filner for several years. Excluding the women who came forward this week, why do you think women have been so reluctant to report their stories to authorities, to go public with them? Why do you think witnesses have been reluctant to do this?
You know, that's the irony in all of this. Yes, I was one of the women that established the sexual harassment policy at San Diego State. And just like any other policy, whether it's civil rights or women's rights or gay rights, somehow when we establish the policy, the laws, we think our job is done. And what happens is we don't keep vigilant, ever vigilant on making sure that we're implementing those laws and those policies. And what happens, we fall into this code of silence because there still is the fear of retribution and not even understanding the expansiveness of the law and how inclusive it is of a number of behaviors that constitute sexual harassment. So most people, most women and men will feel this really may not be sexual harassment, and if I come out, I'm going to be either embarrassed or I'm going to experience retribution. And so that code of silence just maintains itself. And so I wanted to be here today to say this is the time, if not now, when we've experienced these many years, and I look at women who are my peers. We all have our stories to tell of where we experienced sexual harassment. We didn't have a place to go. We never told our story, and yet we live with those stories for the rest of our lives. And I don't want women to be continuing to live with those experiences because they didn't feel like they had a place to go.
Ronnie, you're a retired Rear Admiral, a former Navy mayor. You've ascended in a field that's male-dominated. I think a lot of people will be shocked to hear that someone as powerful as you are was on the receiving end of this kind of treatment. How galled were you when this alleged incident occurred with Bob Filner?
I was so angry, and I felt violated. I just didn't expect anything like that to happen. And it made me very, very angry, and I felt violated. He got into my space.
And Patty, these sexual harassment allegations were first made public 2 weeks ago. Why come forward now?
Amita, I think enough is enough. I think that we have gotten to a point where we don't want to say, oh, that's just Bob. It's not good enough that's just Bob or Jack or Joe or Phil or anyone. Bob Filner is the leader of our city. He is in a position now where he can't be in a meeting with a female staffer. And there are young women working for him. There are young women who work in organizations that perhaps he has power over. And to think that my silence, our silence, is affecting those young women is devastating. And I think it's just time that we stood up and say, we cannot have this kind of an immoral man leading our city.
And Ronnie, you know, the mayor has come out and he has said there's a monster inside of him. He has said he needs help. He has said that he has disrespected and intimidated women. But he has also said that he doesn't believe the sexual harassment allegations and that once due process takes place, justice will prevail, in his words. What do you think of his response? What do you want to see happen?
I think that he's the leader of our city, and when you raise your right hand and you take that oath to support and defend the Constitution as a public servant, what you're saying is you're signing up to a higher level of standards in your life, and your personal life and your professional life all meld in together as a leader, and you're there for people to look up to and as a role model. He's not been a role model. He's not a leader for our country, for our community. And I think that it's time for us to call for his resignation. And today, what I want to say to all the women, we're here to support all the women that have come forward. And I want to say to all the women out there that we want you to rally, and our city deserves much, much better leadership than what we have in Bob Filner, and we want to call for his resignation. And we want all the women that are still out there, because there are many, many stories in this city. We want all those women to come forward.
And we're going to close it there. Ronnie, Sharon, Joyce, Patty, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Thank you for listening to us.
Yes. That was KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma in an exclusive interview with former San Diego Navy Mayor Ronnie Froman, businesswoman Patty Roscoe, San Diego Port Tenants Association President Sharon Bernie Cloward, and San Diego State University Dean Joyce Gaddis, all of them stepping forward with allegations of unwanted sexual advances by Mayor Bob Filner. KPBS partner iNewsSource collaborated on that report. You heard one of the women say that she hopes other women come forward. The Sheriff's Department has set up a hotline to take reports. The number is there on your screen. KPBS has repeatedly asked the mayor's office to give an interview or any response to the sexual harassment allegations, but has received no response other than a prepared statement denying the accusations. At an event earlier today, Mayor Bob Filner did repeat his call for due process and told the city to take a deep breath.
For the part that I have played, and I take responsibility for putting the city through a very bad time, again, I apologize to all of you. Certainly was never my intention to be a mayor who went out like this.
San Diego Mayor Bob Filner is apologetic, then defiant as he agrees to resign. I'm Dwayne Brown. Full coverage of the mayor's resignation tonight on KPBS Evening Edition. Hello, good evening. After weeks of controversy and accusation, San Diego Mayor Bob Filner is resigning effective in 1 week. It's part of a settlement deal connected to a sexual harassment lawsuit filed by his former communications director. She is one of 18 women who accused the mayor of making unwanted sexual advances. Our coverage begins with a look at the deal. Senior news editor Mark Sauer joins us from the News Center. Mark, give us the high points of what the council unanimously agreed to in today's historic settlement.
Well, Dwayne, the key point, of course, is that Bob Filner steps down as mayor at 5 p.m. next Friday. The city will pay for and provide his legal defense against the lawsuit filed by his former aide, Irene McCormick Jackson, and claims by other city employees or contractors. But taxpayers will not pay for Filner's defense in any criminal cases that could arise, either from unwanted sexual advances or dealings with contractors, including the controversial Sun Road case.
And Filner can also hire his own lawyers at city expense.
Yes, but the deal has a cap of $98,000 for those attorney fees. City Attorney Jan Goldsmith noted the city paid $5 or $10 million on attorney fees for council members several years ago during the SEC investigation.
KPBS senior news editor Mark Sauer. Filner says the resignation is the toughest decision of his life. Here now, a portion of his statement before council.
Obviously, this is not a happy time for any of us, not for the city of San Diego. not for those who represent. And for my own part in causing all this, I offer a deep apology, certainly to all the citizens of San Diego and through you to the citizens that you represent. The city should not have been put through this, and my own personal failures were responsible, and I apologize to the city. I have a lot of supporters out there. I apologize to all of you. I think I let you down. We had a chance to do a progressive vision in the city for the first time in 50 years. As I'll say later, we need you to carry that vision forward. This is not the time to let it die. But I apologize to all of you. I would like to say especially to my former fiancée, Bronwyn. I love you very much. You came to love San Diego as much as I did, and you did memorable things in the short time that you were First Lady. And I personally apologize for the hurt that I have caused you, Bronwyn. To all the women that I offended, I had no intention to be offensive, to violate any physical or emotional space. I was trying to establish personal relationships, but the combination of awkwardness and hubris, I think, led to behavior that many found offensive. I again, as I have in the past, sincerely apologize to all of you, and I will try to make amends in any suitable manner. So for the part that I have played, and I take responsibility for putting the city through a very bad time, again, I apologize to all of you. Certainly was never my intention to be a mayor who went out like this. Now, I have to caution the council about one thing, and I guess the city. You know, I started my political career facing lynch mobs. And I think we have just faced one here in San Diego. And you're going to have to deal with that. In a lynch mob mentality, rumors become allegations. Allegations become facts. Facts become evidence of sexual harassment, which have led to demands for my resignation and recall.
Without evidence.
Not one allegation, members of the council, has ever been independently verified or proven in court. I have never sexually harassed anyone. But the hysteria that has been created, and many of you helped to feed, is the hysteria of a lynch mob. Now, as I said, I faced lynch mobs many times when I was younger. No evidence was needed. The mob knew who was guilty. Who needed due process? Well, ladies and gentlemen, democracy needs due process.
That was San Diego Mayor Bob Filner earlier today announcing his resignation in light of sexual misconduct allegations. And after reaching a deal with the city, we have the speech in its entirety on our website, kpbs.org. Now, the sexual harassment suit is just one of the legal troubles Filner may be facing tonight. Our media partner 10 News reports he is under investigation by the State Attorney General's office as well. The report quotes sources close to the investigation who say the resignation will not affect it. State investigators have been working with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, which is running a hotline to take complaints against the mayor. And the woman who sued Filner for sexual harassment, Irene McCormick Jackson, issued a statement after today's meeting saying she's relieved and telling Filner, quote, "You will not be missed," end quote. Now, the reaction to Filner's resignation continues to trickle in tonight. KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma joins us from the News Center. Amitha, the sexual harassment accusations lodged against the mayor started 5 weeks ago. In fact, you were one of the first to actually report this when former City Councilwoman Donna Fry and lawyers Marco Gonzalez and Corey Briggs held that news conference calling on Filner to step down because of the mistreatment or alleged. What's their reaction to tonight's news?
Well, Dwayne, they said that they felt a sense of relief that this horrible chapter in the city of San Diego's history has come to a close. And they said they felt some satisfaction for the part they played in reaching this point. They praised the women who have come forward. They said, quote, "They are the heroes and we cannot thank them enough for their efforts." They also reiterated what they had said back in mid-July when they first held that press conference, that they went public with their accusations because breaches of public trust and abuse of political power violate this community's values.
And Amitha, you also spoke with retired Rear Admiral Ronnie Froman, one of the other women who came forward with claims of sexual harassment by Filner. What did she have to say about the resignation?
She said she had started to feel sorry for Filner in recent weeks until his speech today, during which she says he came across as apologetic for his conduct, but then painted himself as a victim of a lynch mob. Froman characterized the speech by Filner, a former congressman, as a, quote, Filner buster. She says it's obvious he still doesn't get what he did or the effect his behavior had on women. And also, feminist attorney Gloria Allred also released a statement saying, quote, "Today is a day of reckoning for Mayor Filner and a day of vindication for his many alleged victims. Though Mayor Filner still continues to live in his own reality and deny responsibility for the conduct which we allege in our lawsuit, the fact is that he has done what was absolutely needed."
KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma. Today's resignation will make Council President Todd Gloria the interim mayor. Gloria will, or rather he says he will immediately order a top-down review of city departments and go to work on a backlog of what he describes as public records requests. We've also received statements from some other council members. 5th District Council member Mark Kersey writes, "Now our city workers will be rid of this man who broke their trust and abused his power." And while 7th District Councilman Scott Sherman was out of town, he still sent this message. For some analysis, he sent this message: "Truly believe that ratifying this agreement is what's right for the citizens of San Diego." Now for some analysis and a look at what we can expect as we move forward, we go to Allison St. John with her guests. She's in for Peggy Pico tonight.
So the mayor has resigned, and we had a day of testimony at City Hall with San Diegans divided over what some saw as a kind of Faustian bargain with the mayor. And that led up to the council vote in closed session to approve the deal, immediately followed by the mayor's resignation speech. My guest, Brian Adams of San Diego State University, is here to help us digest all this, along with legal analyst Dan Eaton. Thank you both very much for being here.
Happy to be here.
So Dan, let's just start with you. The mayor's speech. What was the main thing that you, sorry, not Dan, I was going to ask you, what in fact is the thing that struck you most about the mayor's speech? Because he seemed to take responsibility at the beginning, but things changed dramatically.
Yeah, it was very surprising. It got off to a very typical start with apologizing to the women who accused him of sexual harassment, apologizing to his supporters, apologizing to the city. But then he became very defiant. He called it a lynch mob. He said he hadn't been given due process. He claimed there was a larger effort to try to get him out of office. And that's typically what you don't see in these types of speeches. Typically, you don't see politicians taking such a defiant stand, even as they're resigning.
And so, Dan, thanks, Brian. Thank you. So, Dan, about the settlement, talk a little bit about that, because people see it as a bit of a devil's bargain with the mayor, but how much of his legal fees will actually be covered by this settlement?
Well, it's right on the face of it, isn't it? And $98,000 at least in outside legal fees. But here's the interesting thing. Remember that even before this broke, Allison, the mayor and the city attorney's office had a very contentious relationship. Now, as part of the settlement, the city attorney is going to be defending him in the McCormick-Jackson lawsuit. So he's going to be their lawyers. The city attorney is going to be the mayor's lawyers going forward. If he does use outside counsel, and he will, to provide independent advice, it's capped at $98,000. After $98,000, it's all on the mayor's dime.
And what about the city? I mean, could the city stand to, how much do you think the city could stand to lose in case of other cases apart from the Irene McCormick-Jackson one?
Well, let's talk specifically about sexual harassment, because understand that the mayor is a supervisor, and therefore under California law, if they are found liable for sexual harassment, the city, as the mayor's employer, is automatically liable. So they are both in this together, except for punitive damages, by the way. If punitive damages are assessed, that could be against Mayor Filner himself, but again, you can't squeeze blood from a turnip, and it's not clear that the mayor has the resources to pay any significant judgment. In fact, it's the lack of resources, he said in his speech, that led him to take this deal and have the city defend him in these lawsuits.
Right. Now, Brian, that was a very sort of unpleasant political decision for the City Council to have to take. There were a lot of people at City Hall today who were testifying both for and against the recall. Some people were saying, why don't you let us vote him out instead of paying his legal fees to get him out? Yeah, why did they decide this was better than a recall?
Yeah, it was a very difficult political decision for the City Council because on the one hand, they all have an interest in having a resolution to this. And I think all the City Council members, for both their personal political reasons as well as for the city as a whole, want a resolution. On the other hand, any deal that allows for some city money to be used defending Filner is going to be politically unpopular. And so City Council members were sort of stuck between, on the one hand, trying to resolve this issue, but realizing the only way they could resolve it to get Filner to resign voluntarily is to give him something to try to get him out the door.
Okay. Might this decision have some political repercussions for some council members who may end up running for mayor to fill the vacancy?
Yes, definitely. I think if any of the city council members run in the special election to follow, that this will be a big issue because there will be a lot of criticism of them for doing that. But I think long term, it won't be that big of an issue. I mean, I think that eventually, 3 or 4 years from now, when a lot of these city council members are running for re-election, that their voters aren't going to remember any of this. They're just going to remember that Filner resigned. But short term, I think it could be a real problem for any of the city council members who are running for office.
And Dan, what do you think about Jan Goldsmith's performance in this? I mean, was that a good deal that was worked out? Do you think the best the city could accomplish?
Well, it was probably the best the city could accomplish. Understand that Bob Filner had outstanding legal representation, and what the city was trying to do was to get out of this as inexpensively as possible. And looking at the terms of the deal and the kinds of things that are excluded, Allison, the city and Bob Filner did pretty well. It seems like a pretty fair agreement. And understand, Allison, that Bob Filner defiantly said, I never sexually harassed anyone. So how could he have apologized for all these things? It's actually reconcilable. Inappropriate behavior is not sexual harassment. And as this case goes forwards, and understand mediation continues with Irene McCormick-Jackson, we'll see whether Bob Filner is right about never having legally sexually harassed anyone.
So what does this do for Gloria Allred? Because now, in fact, if she is suing for damages, it's the San Diego taxpayers that's going to be paying them. So how does that affect her strategy?
Well, the beat goes on with respect to the sexual harassment lawsuit. Understand, there is a hearing coming up on September 16th regarding the mayor's motion to get this out of San Diego County. Will the city agree with the mayor's attorneys that that's such a good idea? I have my doubts about that. But the lawsuit is going to go forward. And understand, here's another important thing that Jan Goldsmith said. He said the mediation process is continuing, even with Gloria Allred. So it is possible, Allison, that we may get this legal action that Irene McCormick-Jackson settled after all. It'll just take a little time.
What is your, if you were a betting man, bet that there might be many other cases coming out of the woodwork?
Well, some of the allegations, frankly, and I won't go into specifics, don't rise to the level of legally actionable sexual harassment for a number of reasons. Part of it is the nature of the conduct is not sufficiently severe or pervasive, which is what you need for sexual harassment. Some of them, statute of limitations or the time limitation for bringing them is long past. Some of them don't involve employees, and there are special rules that apply to those. So there will probably be at least one or two, because one already has been filed with the state anti-discrimination agency. But as far as dozens and dozens of these things, I don't don't see it. It'll be a handful at most, in my judgment, as far as lawsuits that come out of sexual harassment behavior. Now, understand there are a whole bunch of other things of which the mayor is accused, and we may yet see lawsuits about those things.
Well, San Diegans have seen huge legal fees paid in the pension debacle, so this may in fact not rise to that level.
It may end up being a very good bargain with respect to the amount of money that's involved, but understand it costs money to have the very fine attorneys at the city attorney's office working for the mayor as well, in a manner of speaking. And that's a cost the city, in agreeing to defend Bob Filner through the city attorney's office, has decided to incur itself.
So, Brian, what is the next step? That seems to be the message today. It's time to move forward.
Yeah, well, they're going to have a special election, probably sometime in November, and it'll be interesting to see how many candidates actually choose to run, whether the establishment interest groups are able to coalesce around a couple of candidates, or whether we see a free-for-all where we have 5 or 6 major candidates all vying for the mayor's position.
It's only 3 months, so perhaps it's not a lot of time for a candidate with less name recognition to get enough publicity to run it, stand a chance.
Yes, it's a very short time, not just to run a campaign, but also to raise money. So a lot of these prospective candidates are now going through the calculation whether they'll be able to have enough money to run an effective campaign in 3 months, and and that may winnow the field down to just a few.
Okay. One of the comments made today by Councilwoman Marty Emerald was that this is not a time for celebration. Do you think that San Diego is going to heed those words?
I think so, because I don't think anybody got everything they wanted in this, both Filner supporters and Filner opponents. And I think in many ways Marty Emerald did a better job of making the case for Bob Filner than Bob Filner did himself in his concession speech. And I think I think that for a lot of people, they're just going to look forward to the special election.
Okay, thank you very much. We have days and weeks and months more to analyze this, so thank you very much. Brian Adams of San Diego State University and Dan Eaton, legal analyst. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Mayor Filner's office has been under a cloud since these claims of sexual harassment came out in July, but for the first-term mayor, controversy was never new or far away. Our John Rossman has this look back.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, our next mayor,
Bob Filner! Former Congressman Bob Filner became San Diego's first Democratic mayor in nearly 30 years.
I think we mark a new day for the beginning of our city. After nearly a decade of crises and cutbacks, we finally have a chance to look ahead, begin planning for a brighter future.
In his first month, he stopped prosecuting medical marijuana violations. As a result, controversial marijuana dispensaries were left open to run.
The city attorney is our attorney, so we can direct him on things. If the city council and the mayor agree that he should not be using this zoning stuff, to persecute people, then we can say that to him, and he can't do it.
During those beginning months, Filner also publicly and fiercely argued with City Council President Todd Gloria and City Attorney Jan Goldsmith. One argument centered on a hotel fee negotiation between the city and Tourism Marketing District. The 3-month debate crisscrossed city meetings and court hearings.
Right now, they are not living up to the agreement. They have not given the 5%. They say they're not intending to do it. They said you're going to get the leftovers. I want that money because it's so important to our community to give them money off the top. And when they do that, the agreement says they'll get the rest of their money.
He made Plaza de Panama more pedestrian-friendly by ripping out 60 parking spots, and through an emergency finding, battled the stench of bird poo long plaguing La Jolla.
And when I became mayor, they said it would take about 2 years to get the permits to deal with this. And I said, well, that's not acceptable.
One of his ongoing initiatives was strengthening San Diego's relationship with its southern neighbor. He opened an office in Tijuana and made national news with an attempted, but failed, bid to co-host a cross-border Summer Olympics. May marked a significant month for the mayor. He leased downtown office space for 2 city departments, moving both down the street. The cheaper rent ended up saving the city $15.8 million. He also brokered an agreement between 6 unions that represent the city employees. The 5-year deal is estimated to save the city $25 million alone in its first year. But in July, KPBS broke news of sexual harassment allegations leveled at Mayor Filner. His aggressive agenda and crusade to shake up City Hall hit a wall. He dug in and battled to keep his position, but it was not enough. Under piling evidence, Mayor Filner resigned, sealing a legacy of polarizing politics, ambition, and scandal.
And we're moving us forward. Thank you so much.
KPBS reporter John Rossman. Our Metro reporter Sandia Dirks has been following this story from the beginning and spoke to one of the first women to accuse Filner of sexual misconduct. She was in council chambers all afternoon and joins us now from the news center. So, Sandia, when the mayor gave his resignation speech, we heard his supporters cheering him on in the background. But before the council vote, there was a lot of divided public comments. Tell us about the overall mood in the chambers.
Well, it was very emotional. There was a lot of people there who felt very, very deeply about the mayor. And there were some victims who had come forward to allege the mayor of sexual harassment, including Laura Fink, the woman that I talked to, the second woman to come forward. Here's what she said.
Without the mayor's resignation, our city will continue to be paralyzed by this scandal. Progress will be arrested, and our focus will continue to be monopolized by this dark chapter in our history.
And she really was. She was crying up there. And there were several other people who reached that level of emotion, including Mayor Filner supporters, those who feel that he was a progressive voice who spoke for the little guy, and now they feel like their champion is gone. One of those is Enrique Morones. He's an activist, and he says that he stands by the mayor because of his legacy of civil rights work.
We have seen an overwhelming majority of San Diegans tired of this circus of the public execution that is taking place. We demand due process for the mayor as well as the accusers.
And you had just so much emotion, so many people from different sides, so many people who feel like they have a vested stake in this. There were also Filner supporters or previous Filner supporters who came forward and said, look, this isn't how we should do this. There's a recall campaign. It's underway. We should really give the recall campaign and the democratic process a chance to play out rather than having this kind of backroom deal control the day. One of those who made that point was Joan Raymond.
The people deserve a transparent resolution that is not a backroom political deal. If the people want to recall Mayor Filner, so be it. Let the people vote.
Just big emotions all around, Dwayne.
And Sandia, how did the mood change after Filner's nearly 15-minute speech? I know some of the council said it was not a time for celebration.
No, indeed, it was not a time for a celebration. It was definitely an exhausting and emotional day. I mean, the mayor also cried when he spoke. I think everyone felt this sort of sense of, well, what now? And also, what just happened? We've been through this tumultuous summer of scandal. It's been exhausting. It's been a roller coaster. And it's sort of hard to understand everything that has gone on in San Diego over the last few months. But I think there is a sense of kind of sad relief that maybe we can move forward, and we will see what happens next.
KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks. And if you're just joining us, recapping our top story tonight, Mayor Bob Filner has resigned effective the end of the month, August 30th. Filner has been accused of sexual misconduct by 18 women. In a speech at City Hall, the mayor first appeared somber but then defiant. His resignation was part of a deal struck with city council members. The city will pay for and provide his defense against a lawsuit filed by his former aide and claims by other city employees or contractors. Now, the deal allows him to hire his own lawyer or lawyers at the city's expense, but the dollar amount is capped at $98,000. He steps down next Friday at 5 p.m. You can find all of our coverage of this story online at kpbs.org/news/Filner. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a good weekend.
The women who stepped forward to accuse former Mayor Bob Filner of unwanted sexual advances stepped into a harsh media spotlight. They were targets of a hungry media, anxious for every salacious detail. They were targets in other ways as well, with people accusing them of ulterior motives, self-aggrandizement, greed, or certain political leanings. The implication was clear. They were selling their stories in the marketplace of a media frenzy. Let's start with the day Filner resigned, at a city council meeting where Filner backers spoke up for him.
¿Quién les pagó? ¿Por qué lo hacen hasta ahorita?
If we know that the laws are very delicate for sexual harassment, why did they wait so long? Who paid them off? Why did they make these accusations now?
I was brought up to be a strong woman and to immediately put a man in check if he was getting out of hand, not to wait and jump on a political bandwagon.
Here's Filner accuser Peggy Shannon responding to those critics.
I made a conscious decision not to talk. I just wanted to sit back here and listen. They've heard me. They've seen what I had to say. So I didn't want to, to be perfectly honest, I didn't want to be booed.
Laura Fink did speak at that meeting.
This call has been universal among the victims of his reprehensible acts.
I asked her and Peggy Shannon and Morgan Rose, women who had all gone public, why they didn't come forward sooner. And I wanted to find out what actually happened after they did.
Why women don't come forward is because they understand the disparity in power. I think they also believe that they'll be dismissed, that their character will be attacked, or that they won't be believed. And all of those things happened to me.
You can be very vulnerable to crucifixion and character assassination by people who have never, ever spent a minute with you. And so that happened, and that's okay. That's not the important part.
There were reporters yelling into my apartment, yelling my name, bothering my neighbors, banging on the door. It was frightening. I just didn't realize how intense the coverage was going to be and how immediately.
One of the main reasons I didn't come forward when this happened in 2009, he was a congressman. He already had my home phone number. He'd called me at home. He'd requested that private meeting. He could get my social security number, my home address, my place of work. So no, I was not going to come forward at that point.
We look at this situation and there's strength in numbers. I imagine what it would be like if I was the only one coming out. And people ask these questions, why didn't you come out sooner? Why didn't you come out during the campaign? You as an individual, as a person, have to do a calculus as to whether your coming forward will be effective and impactful and believed. And in those situations, I feel that I probably would have been really eviscerated and my motives would have been questioned far more than they were in this situation.
Any woman in this position, in this kind of drama, we're in a lose-lose situation often. But with us all coming forward, that theme, that pattern became so evident that people that might not have believed our stories initially or thought it was for political reasons had to start admitting, no, maybe we have something here.
You lose a part of yourself because you have to be so serious. I mean, I traffic in gallows humor, and I'm, a little bit nutty, and I'm slightly sarcastic, and I actually enjoy talking about, you have one side of you that is constantly sort of shown, and it would be inappropriate to laugh or smile during these things, but it's a part of you that you're not you don't get to exhibit.
I didn't ever want something like this to become part of my story, but by coming out, it's now my story. It's a part of my life. So there was that sacrifice I made, but I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't recant anything I said. The more we speak out, the more power we have.
The response of women coming forward and telling me their stories was almost universal. Reporters, people in public, people who I didn't know, people who I did know, all told me stories of sexual harassment. It was frightening how pervasive this behavior is across the board. And so this wasn't just because you can abuse power when you have less of it. And it took me aback, because I thought, is this the world that we're leaving to our daughters, where sexual harassment is a rite of passage, where it's rare if it doesn't happen to you? And it's just extraordinarily upsetting. So, we hope we can change that.
The women who came forward say it isn't even so much about them. It's about the women who couldn't come forward. And they say it isn't even about Bob Filner. It's about a culture of sexual harassment that permeates every sector of our society, a culture that can only be stopped by women speaking out. Speaking out can carry a heavy price, but these women say that not speaking costs a lot more. Sandhya Dirks, KPBS News.